Okay, so there, lots of assignments have already been turned in online, and I've gone through those assignments, and I think some people in this class and in my online class are working too hard with the assignments. We need to, I want you to, as you're reading, you need to be thinking critically. You need to be asking the question, is whatever this person is saying, is this true? I mean, does it sound logical? Is it true? Have I had other experiences, or do I have other data to back it up? And in your answers that you give back, you can cite sources if you want to, but most of the time you just have to make kind of a one-sentence comment, if you can get away with that, a one-sentence comment on the feedback. So everyone should have gotten an email from me today with a link maybe I sent a link to the video, but there's two links. There's one link to an example. So this is how, so you can get into your Bruin mail. It looks like this. It's a Gmail. If you click on the 9 little dots, you can bring up Drive. And in Drive, it should show your Google Docs. So we have an assignment example. If you can't see this, you can go under, let's see, where is the incoming? So for those of you who have computers, can you see those two documents in your drive? So the example assignment, this is one that I did this assignment for this was on Thoreau and his Walden Pond situation. I don't think it's an assignment in class. It was the third chapter, but I just did it to see how long it would take me. This took me about an hour, and you can see how long my answers are. So, and there are some of you who have spent a lot of time, and I think it's awesome that you've expressed yourself that way. But I know this is college, and at least in my class, this is all I expect. You're going to get the full 10 points by handing in just these really quick ones. Also, on the dates, I don't need a full sentence on the dates. You can. So in this one, it says, when did Ralph Waldo Emerson, when did he write this? It was published in 1854, but he spent 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days in his little shack. It was a 10 by 15 shack in a little garden. And so he spent 2 years. So 1852 and 1853, he spent writing that. And so that, if it asks for dates, just put dates. Don't make a whole sentence out of that. So I think one of the reasons that Professor Eng and I think Salt Lake Community College in general, they're trying to make this a really rigorous environment for you, because if you move into the University of Utah or Utah State or BYU, well, I don't know about Utah State, but the University of Utah and BYU, if you move into those types of colleges, you're going to have this. They're going to expect way more information in their assignments than what I'm going to expect. And so I think that's why some of your teachers are really hardcore about let's take 2 or 3 hours per assignment to get these things done. So I'm hopefully what I really want in this class is for you to just critically think about everything that you're reading, especially these guys. And so this is an example. You can look at this. Now, those of you who are logged in, if you go to your drive, go into the class discussion, everyone should be able to edit this. So we'll just start with this. I'm only going to do a couple of vocabulary words because I don't want to get mired down in the vocabulary words. And this, because there are a lot of text questions about this. Sorry.
Is this the one due today?
This is the one that was supposed to be due today, or due last night, and then we talk about it today.
Well, it says it's due today at like
Yeah,
11
Is it due today at 11? All right. It's not a problem. So that was. So the way it's supposed to work is the assignments are due the night before.
Yeah, but then I saw the due date. I was like,
So I understand we've got another day.
Okay. Well, because since I did it that way, you still have until 11 tonight. So, and this is what I was going to be flexible with on anyway. So I'm not really caring about it. But so someone type in. So my vocabulary word out of here. Let's see.
Oh, real quick. I tried to go on that join.me, and then I tried to join, and it says that it was wrong.
Okay, so if I send out a join.me and you have a join.me, then that was for last class.
Oh, okay.
And so that one will have been expired. So there's several different online, what do we call them, like conference things. There's GoToMeeting, and then there's GoToMeeting, and then I'm using join.me. I like join.me because it's faster than GoToMeeting. I actually have a GoToMeeting account too. And GoToMeeting, this is the one thing that I'm struggling with the JoinMe. We may switch over to GoToMeeting because JoinMe, I can't have reoccurring meetings. I have to schedule a new meeting every time, which means that you have to. And so I'm trying to figure out a way around that. Because with GoToMeeting, you can just set up one meeting and you can have it last for the 16 classes that we've got left. So.
I'm on my Google Bruins mail. I'm in Google Drive, and I don't have the thing. I don't have the tuition.
Okay, so did you get an email from me?
I did.
Okay, so go in there and click on one of those. So now some of you, there's 2 or 3 in this class who are using a different email than their Bruin mail, and so if you did that, it may not be. So there should be 2 links. Click on the links and see. You should be able to access it whether you have Bruin mail or have access to your Bruin mail or not.
So we were all supposed to get it from you?
Yeah, earlier this morning. Who didn't get an email from me?
Is it supposed to be on our bio page or our campus?
It will be in your Bruin mail.
You can access it through Canvas.
You can access it through Canvas.
Actually, what's the, so you know how you said that when you do the assignment, we're supposed to have somebody check it?
Oh, turn it in. That's just automatic.
Well, mine, so just when we turn it in, it will do that?
Yeah, when you paste in your text into that submit text field stuff, it will check it.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
Okay.
so it does that. It does that automatically.
Will it show you though? Because mine's not showing me. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So submit the assignment, and I don't know how long it takes for Turnitin to give feedback once you turn it in. I don't think it's immediate because when I was going to school and they were using Turnitin, sometimes it would take 2 days. That was the worst case scenario. Most of the time it was a couple of hours. And I don't know how long it takes for this. So I actually haven't been checking that. So, but is someone else logged in here? Can you type in that document? I should hook up my. Oh, somebody's in
I was
there.
able to, but it didn't come up with that toolbar on mine. I don't know if it's because
I want to see.
Apple, but
Oh, I don't know. This is the one thing with the iPad. I don't know how it works. I've never. You may have to install Google Docs.
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah. So if you have an iPad, you're going to have to install Google Docs. If you just have outside of the browser.
Yeah, we can edit this.
Okay. Yeah, and so if you type in this is the one thing I want people to understand about Google Docs. This is why it's totally awesome because everybody who's in this class can get in and we can. And so with your group assignments, this is what I want you to do. I want you to use Google Doc to work on your assignment. So if you're given something to do, so as a class, when we do group assignments, I'll say, okay, I want this group to do the first, we'll probably have 4 or 5 groups in the class. And so I'll say, okay, I want this group to do the first 2. You come up with 2 vocabulary words, and you do the first 5. The next group will do, the next 5 questions. And then that group will just, and everyone will just use the same. Everyone can be using the same Google Doc, and you can submit the same assignments. This is one thing that Turnitin doesn't have.
So then you sent us the link, but you didn't post them on our Google Docs. Is that correct?
I sent. No, that's right. I didn't post them on your Google Docs. Sorry.
No, I was just making sure.
No, you're right. Because one of the things that I was a little bit freaked out about this morning is I didn't want to send it out and so everyone had everybody else's email address. But eventually, by the end of the class, you're going to have everyone's email address because you will be in a group with everyone in the class.
I don't know how, but our teacher last semester, she did it.
Share the folder to every one of us, then we can just access to the folder.
Oh, okay.
But we don't get anyone's email.
Okay. I'll try that out. So,
We don't.
I would personally, I would be freaked out because I'm such a good-looking guy that if in a class, I'm just kidding. So, actually, people are probably going to be afraid of me stalking them. So this is what we're doing in class. So, the vocabulary word that I have is. I think you pronounce it Deracines. It's spelled Deracines. That was a term that the author used. Yeah, did somebody else look that word up? You did? You want to just type it in? Did you log into this?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Okay.
Are we supposed to be like on this?
Yeah, so you can be on this. Yeah, you can be in this page with us adding stuff in because this is where the class discussion is going to go on. So I just got my keyboard out. No, I just have this open to the public. It's not on Canvas. This is just a Google Doc that I created through my Bruin mail.
And also with that,
You have to have Google Docs too.
It's like pretty much he sent you a link, access to the link, and it will give you this. So it's like if you don't type anything, I can do it right now. It will show up.
Yeah. So like here, I'll put mine. So this is.
if you know by chance Heather Schumacher, she teaches econ. She's the one that used it, and then she said that she can know who write what, and if anyone raised anyone else's stuff, she could know as well.
I think Google Documents record our adaptations.
Yeah, I do know that.
Okay.
I do know that part of it. So I may seek her out and find out what she did because that's the one thing that I was. So and. So I mean that's my addition to the class. Yeah, you got to check it out to see what it's gonna do. So it's almost like a Twitter feed kind of writing class. So I sent the link out to your Bruin email, and there's like 3 people that it wasn't your Bruin email; it's some other email that you've switched up in my page. So let's start going through. We won't talk about section B today. We're a little bit behind, so let's. let's just talk about question 1. So this is, why does Hilbroner assume that the reader knows that man came down from the trees? Who has an idea what he's talking about? Marissa.
Because he's talking about evolution and just like referring to what we came from, right?
Okay, so that was the assumption that I made at first, and I'm going to hold to that assumption. But someone turned in an assignment that said he's talking about Adam and Eve coming down out of the tree. Which I thought that's just as valid as the evolution. I think most of us are thinking evolution, but there's that aspect that sure you could have come down out of the.
I feel stupid now with my answer.
So no, you don't, and don't feel stupid. This is kind of. So he just kind of starts out. That's how he starts it out, and he just makes the assumption that the reader's kind of understanding what he's talking about. But like we say, I've already seen two. I think most of the people said it had to do with evolution, but that doesn't even matter. Maybe he was talking about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, eating the fruit. So that was interesting. Okay, and so somebody can go ahead and type. Well, they can just type right after me there if they want to type that in. So the second question is, explain the sole reason mankind has succeeded in perpetuating itself.
And then do we just type it up there? Or do we
Yeah, if you want to, you can start typing it up there if that's how you want to answer.
Do we submit this for that assignment?
No, if you haven't turned it in, you could submit it. Because I mean, this is why we want to have you turn it in. I'll read through those before we come to class, and then we'll discuss it. And we'll discuss the things. That's why they want you to turn it in. That's why it's supposed to be due the day before we come to class. And if I don't have that correct, like if I have it due on Thursday, I'm gonna have to go back, and I may have it due that way. I may have to go back and redo the whole deal.
So you won't turn it in if we just submitted this, wouldn't turn it in, just like go all red 100%.
It probably would, and this is why. But it doesn't matter to me because I know that we worked on it in class, and because I can look at it and see if I look through there and I see some stuff that is not that's if you've stolen it from somebody else. But as a group, when you turn it in as a group, turn it in will show a higher percentage. So and turn it in will also show if there's other sources, like if it's out of the dictionary. Let's say everybody in the class copied something on a group assignment, and everybody's like, "Oh, let's get together. We'll turn it in," and he won't know because we're all doing a group assignment. But then if I see an exact definition out of the dictionary, it's exactly like the same one everybody turned in, then you're going to be in trouble. So
So do we have to actually submit this to get credit, or?
So this is one of your assignments. So you've got access to this document, and so you could take the stuff out of here. What? So you have access. You do have access to this document, and you could copy this and turn it in.
What they're asking is for us to be logged onto that and for like how our computer hooked up to that part of the assignment.
Oh no. So this isn't part of. This is not part of the assignment that we're hooked up. It's just that
Part of the discussion.
this is just part of the discussion, and this is the way we will discuss going forward because I'm recording what we're doing. So I'm recording the sound and I'm recording what's going on the screen. So for right now, I'm just recording on my computer. It's not part of a GoToMeeting situation. So and so the first one, I mean, we can just put in there. I'll just do this really short. So there's. So, and then the answer to number 2 is it's cooperation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they say socially cooperative, and basically it's just we're cooperating together to.
So one thing that I've been thinking about is just trying to use similar or synonyms just so that it won't be marked.
Right.
So it's because man has adopted the skill to work in teams.
Right, exactly. So, and the reason I want answers like that is because you had to think about it a little bit, and that identifies to me that you understand. That's why we don't want you to copy anything, because if you copy something, whether you understand it or not, I have no idea. But if you've changed it up a little bit, then I know, okay, you're understanding what we're talking about here. And remember that this class is about critical thinking, so we should be questioning the stuff that these people are saying in the. So the next one is, what is more conducive to the survival of the species, self-centeredness or cooperation? So what is it? Okay, we're going to say cooperation. Why do you say cooperation?
I just have an opposing viewpoint.
Okay, so I want to hear the opposing viewpoint, because I have an opposing viewpoint too. Okay, go ahead.
I think it has to be a balance of both. Because you have to be able to look at other people, but you have to also be able to look at yourself and say, what do I need to survive first, before you can look at other people and say, what do they need to survive from me?
Correct. Well, I shouldn't say correct, but that's a good way to think. I mean, it's just like if you're flying on an airplane, they say, okay, if the oxygen masks drop down and you have kids with you, put your mask on first and then put their mask on. So, I mean, that's the same type of situation. In society, I think we're educated to say, okay, let's be cooperative. Because in the long term, the cooperative situation will help you out the most. Or I should say, it will help us out the most if we're cooperative. However, you do have to do what is necessary to survive. Because if everybody was completely selfish, the society wouldn't survive. And if everybody was completely selfless, the society wouldn't survive either. Because you're thinking, oh, I'm not going to drink water today because somebody else may need that water. Yeah, how long is that going to last? Like a couple of days, and then you're going to be dead. So you're right. It has to be a balance. And I mean, this is what this class is about. We're talking about this. We're trying to open. I'm trying to open my mind, have everyone open their minds about these questions.
Well, like in the text, we talk about like how in society now, like everybody kind of has their small piece of the input of the greater good, like peace, like the mind workers, the workers, like
Yeah, and so there's the farmer situation. Like, how many of you have lived on a farm? None of us have lived on a farm. Like 100 years ago, 99 or 95% of the people lived on farms. Maybe 150 years ago. 100 or 99% of the people lived on farms. No one lives on farms. Could any of us survive another week without a farm? No, we couldn't. And but the farmers, the technology to I talked to this farmer. He was a potato farmer up in Idaho. He said I was one of the first ones that started using GPS to drive the tractors. So he said, I had this air-conditioned cab, turn on a good album, or I'd read a book, and it would just drive the machine. He said my farm was big enough that when I started harvesting, he said my plow or whatever it was, it would drive for half a day, and then he would turn it around and drive for half a day back, and that's what he did. That's his farm was big enough. He said in like 3 weeks he would have it harvested. So I mean, you have one person that's probably feeding hundreds or thousands of people. There's no need for all of us to have a farm. I mean, we like to talk about the urban farms and, let's grow locally, let's grow gardens or whatever. It's really not sustainable for as many people as there are. So, I mean, we just need to look at those types of things. Those are the types of things that we're questioning. So it says, and so in question 5, that was that's part of this discussion is why does society hang on a hair? Why was his philosophy that society hangs on a hair?
I think it's what he meant with that was like, as he refers in the book, it's like humans don't have like a specific job like ants do. When they born, they're already born like they know what they're gonna do, what is their responsibility in the society.
Right.
We humans don't. We just develop it throughout the years, deciding whatever we want to do.
Right. So I mean that's part of it.
What if nobody else wants to be farmers?
If nobody, if nobody wants to be farmers, who's going to feed the people? And so this is where the kind of the philosophy comes in. Where okay, if somebody doesn't want to be a farmer, all of a sudden the market forces will say, oh, we need a farmer. You know, we haven't produced wheat in 2 years. All of a sudden, wheat's really expensive. People want wheat. Somebody's like, hey, there's a great opportunity here. I can go out and be a wheat farmer and make a lot of money. So the market kind of helps sustain that. That's why I question. That's why I question if society really is hanging on a hair. Now, there's a lot of ways that you could try to prove that. Like if they talk about this, if there's a terrorist attack and they shut off electricity, what would happen?
A natural disaster.
Yeah, or a natural disaster shuts stuff down. What will happen? You know. And so it's a good question, and so that's need to come up with some answers on that. So then it moves into his next bit. What did society come up with to help stop that? Or what did people do? What have people done for a long time to help stop the collapse? To keep this from happening, like everybody just bails out, nobody's going to be a farmer. Farmer is way too hard work. The work's too hard, I don't want to do it.
Supply and demand, right?
Well, it's supply and demand now, but what did they do previous to supply and demand?
Force somebody to farm.
Force somebody to farm.
Well, like, you talked briefly about how you were born into your occupation. Like, in a lot of countries and previously, like, born into royalty, you went into royalty. Born to a farmer, you eventually inherit the farm. Born to a blacksmith, you eventually become a blacksmith.
Right.
And how, like, your lineage is your occupation.
So they just talked about that as being tradition. The tradition perpetuated.
That was one of the things that helped solve the problem of someone going on, I don't want to do this anymore, was the fact that was tradition, it was a faux pas for you to lead.
Right. There was probably a lot of social pressure and a lot of religious pressure to just kind of stick with what you were doing. I mean, my last name's Gardner. It's obvious what my ancestors did at one point. You know? So there was that. There was the forcing. There was, and then we moved into the cooperation that that's what we're doing today, or the market system. So what's an authority society? Or this one says, authority or command-based thinking. So do we have any countries like that? North Korea. China, and there's other countries that are like half and half. I mean, there's a lot of, I don't want to call them dictators, but that's basically what there are. Like in Asia, there's a lot of authoritarian societies where just a small group of people.
The one that they call socialism.
Yeah, there's socialism is another type of, but that's why I say it's kind of half and half. It's like part of the society, because there's a lot of socialist philosophy in Europe, South America. They have the socialists, and so it's kind of a part of the society is that way. So, and then they were talking about the economic revolution. So how do we change from why do we call it a revolution when they changed from the command or the tradition into the market society? I mean, that's kind of the gist of this whole reading, is that he talks about kind of the struggle to get from those old ways into this, obviously what he considers is a better way with the market forces. So what are some of the things that, and I was surprised about some of this stuff. Let's see, I'm going to look through here.
These people respond to incentives.
So,
Rather than being forced.
rather than being forced, but what were some of the incentives for people to do things? There's one thing I'm looking for in particular. Okay, so what's one incentive that we have today that why do we get a job? Well, to survive, but salary, it's to make money. So so that was one of the things, but what was the other thing it talked about? They talked about fabric. Some particular type of fabric was getting imported, and people kept buying it, and in there it said there were like 77 people that were hanged because they were buying some type of fabric, some new fabric, and it was kind of messing up what they considered was their market system. So I think that's part of the revolution. I mean, it's crazy to me to think that, well, I mean, that's still like that in the world today. There are places in the world where you have to wear certain things or they're going to kill you. So, it's strange he talks about like this was so long ago, but this stuff is still going on in the world today. And even in America, in the high schools, you need to wear a certain outfit or you're going to be ostracized by the group, which is crazy. Which is just crazy to think about. So some of those same forces, some of the same traditional command forces are still going on in our society today, even though and the incentives are not monetary. The incentives are other things. So this is part of the critical thinking. As you answer these questions, I want that kind of response, like, oh yeah, this stuff is still going on today. This stuff hasn't gone away. There hasn't been a revolution. Of course, maybe we can make money however we want to, but we can't dress however we want to. Like if I showed up today in a white robe, big cone hat, you think I'd get very far? I think they would have me out of here pretty quick. I don't think I would last a full class dressed like that.
You could wear that on Halloween.
I could wear it on Halloween. I don't even think I could wear that on Halloween. I could not get away with that. So there's some social pressure in society. I just thought of that example off the top of my head, but that is kind of crazy. I didn't even thought about that until I got to class. But that's a tradition and a command. Both tradition and command would stop me from doing that. Wouldn't have anything to do with the market. It has nothing to do with the market. It just has to do with tradition and command. The country's going to shut that down. I mean, the school's going to shut that down. I'd be fired, like immediately. It didn't even show up on the news. I'm not going to do that. I mean, we can all imagine that happening. And so, one of the things that when I was in college, I read a paper by Thoreau that talked about the profit motive. So, how did the profit motive change? So, in the traditional and the command society, what was the motivation for profit? Was there any motivation for profit?
Probably not in command.
There's not in the command.
It's just they probably cap it and take whatever else theoretically. So you get this much, and then even if you make $1 million, we chop it off and we take it.
Yeah, in the command, you're right. like, we're going to give you enough to survive, but we're going to take the
Even
rest.
if you have a successful business, that's hard to do on your.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the Command Society does. So what was the one thing that they talk about a lot in this chapter, and you will see it more in other chapters. We talk about Adam Smith. How did religion affect the profit motive?
You probably want to be modest. Like,
Right.
sometimes
Like
greed is a bad thing. So, I mean,
and I don't know about I'm well versed in Christianity, but I don't know about. Well, I know a little bit about some of the Eastern religions, but all of those religions kind of teach you need to be modest in whatever you're doing. And what I think is interesting with this paper I read from Thoreau, he said basically it was a way for the people in charge to keep the peasants happy with their situation. Like, you don't need all that stuff. And it was basically the governments were perpetuating the religion, telling people, and this is why I think this keeps getting thrown into these economic things, because the religions were actually teaching people, like Christianity teaches, it's bad to, like, flaunt your wealth. You don't want to do that. Even in today's society, that religious belief still perpetuates, because if I went around and started asking, how much money do you make? Like, people just are not comfortable with that. Because we've been told I remember being little. When I was little, I asked my grandparents, how much money do you make? And I was comparing how much money my grandparents made, how much money my dad made, and how much money I was going to make when I got out and got a job. And what was the response I got from my grandparents? Don't ask people about how much money they make. Where did they get that? Why does it really matter? So why does it matter? Because, for instance, if you're single, how much money do you really need to survive? It's hard to say, but not as much as. So I've got a family. I've got 4 kids. My kids are college age. I've got 2 kids that are one that's college age and one that's getting close to college age. How much money do I need to survive? Way more money than a single person. And so if the single person saw what I was making, they're like, dude, you're making so much money. And then I'm looking at the single person goes, you've got so much more disposable income. I can't. The single guys, maybe if the single guy was making the money I was making, he'd be driving a super nice car. I'm driving a tiny little electric car. And so, I mean, that's just and so just saying how much money I make doesn't really have anything to do with it, but it's part of like the tradition that we don't talk about money. And I think that was actually perpetuated through think about it, if the government's controlling religion, the government's going to want everybody to think, oh, it's really good to be poor. And he even talks about that in here. It's really good to be poor. And this is where he's starting to think where some people got the idea, like, we don't have to listen to the religion anymore. It's really not that bad. I'm collecting all this gold. I could have this life of leisure. And that's where we move over to and then it talks about, in 15, there's Jacob, the Fugger of Augsburg. If somebody knows German, I'm probably pronouncing that. So who was Jacob Fugger of Augsburg? Somebody know? So who was he? He basically was one of the first banking systems set up with loaning people money. Super wealthy. And it's funny because when he died, or when he was getting ready to die, he wanted to hand it off to one of his relatives. They're like, "No, it's okay. I'm fine with whatever's going on. I don't want the hassle of having to deal with all that money." interesting. I mean, all of us are thinking, man, if I had that, I would have just, I would have taken over. So there were all these banking families that you can look through. Look through some of those. But that's what these words, these groups of banks. And so the revolution, that's kind of, they must have started educating people to say, maybe it's not so bad if you try to make a profit, try to better yourself. So we've got, as we talk about these different economic histories, take that into consideration, the religious aspect of what the religious groups were trying to get the people to believe. I mean, still today, we've still got those are still being perpetuated in our society. In other societies in the world too, we kind of look at that, other societies that, some of those more oppressive countries where they're really trying to keep their people down for whatever reason, they're still doing a similar type of a thing, trying to make them feel like, oh, you're better because you live this, really minimalistic type of life. So the other, there was so the last concept, we're not doing hardly anything anymore. So back to as we do this class discussion in the future with the people who have computers, we can type in the answers here. It gives a little bit more of what's going on than what we're actually doing. So, but now we're down to 17 and 18. And so what is the relationship in a market system of land, labor, and capital? What? This is 17. Well, we skipped over 16. We should talk about 16. So Venice, Florence, Genoa, Lucca. So what do these places have to do with this economic revolution? So do you know what happened in Venice? The Renaissance. This is where the Renaissance started. This is one of the things. They started to exchange ideas, and one of the reasons that was important is they started to exchange ideas, and people started to cross over from the traditional do-what-your-father did. So these guys all got together, and where all these people, I should say people, it wasn't just guys, but it was all these people got together in Venice and Florence. They basically imported tradesmen from different places in the world. They're all together in one place. And they were comfortable, so they had enough, and then they had extra time. So then they started talking to each other. And they started saying, so like the goldsmith may have gone over to the blacksmith, and the blacksmith may have gone over to the potter, and they started saying, okay, what are you doing? And the potter said, and as the blacksmith maybe is watching the potter, he's saying, if you did it this way, or if you use this tool, maybe you could make a taller pot. Maybe it'd hold more water. Maybe you could make a thinner pot. And the same type of thing was going on. Something interesting, just an interesting little fact, that for the first 100 years of printing, do you know what Gutenberg did for a living? Anyone know? He wasn't a printer. He didn't start out as a printer because he invented the printing press. But do you know what he started out? He was a goldsmith. And the reason that goldsmithing as a trade was necessary for printing is because you needed to know how to cast small stuff. So he'd learned how to cast small stuff for jewelry. And so when he went into printing, and of course, they're using lead because it's cheaper and it's easier to work with. Well, it's not easier to work with, but it's cheaper and easier to find. So they started using lead, and then that's how they were able to cast the letters for the first set of printing plates. And so for the first 100 years of printing, all of the people that were printers were also goldsmiths, because you had to have that skill. You had to have the goldsmithing skill to be able to run a printer. And this all happened because they started bringing these groups of people together with these different trades people, and then they'd help each other out. And that's what started the Renaissance, and also it became necessary to have a more market system to move the goods and services around. So what is the relationship between land, labor, and capital? This is
Land shall gain the profit.
okay. So the land. And the reason they say, and I'm going to draw this on the board so that the folks who are listening. So we say, here they say land, and land is going to change later on, but so there's like a 3 tripod thing here for land, labor, and capital. And to have a market system, you have to have all 3. So what if you just, so this is the tripod. This is a horrible picture of a tripod. Okay, so with the tripod, what happens if you take one of the legs out? It falls down. So we've got land, labor, and capital. So you have to have that tripod to have a market system. So if you have land, but you don't have labor. So if you have land and capital, so if you have a lot of money and you have a lot of property, what can you do with it? Nothing. You've got to have somebody to work the land. It's the same thing. If you've got a bunch of people, you've got a bunch of money. And so we say land here, but let's just say space. So if you've got a bunch of people, say we get everybody out in the, I don't know what you call it, what do they call that area out there, the quad? I'm going to call it the quad. But so you get a bunch of people out there and they're all standing out there. So and you give them a bunch of money. Can they do anything? Well, the factory's not there. So you've got to get the people. So when they're talking about land, they're not talking about just land. They're talking about the resource to use the labor to put that stuff together. So the last question is about enclosure.
So you're only counting those 18?
What? Oh, sorry. I forget this. There are 4 more. So this is where the religious stuff comes in.
Is that what you want to give up?
What? So we've talked. It's funny because we've already talked about the religious stuff. So you understand what enclosure is? So enclosure. So read through this chapter. Figure out what enclosure is. I'm going to leave that one unanswered. And so then let's go to the next one. So this is where we talked about. So in 19, it's how did the decay of religious spirit contribute to the rise of capitalism and the market system? So we talked about that a little bit, where the religions, who I think were predominantly controlled by the ruling class, would try to teach people that this is one of the ways religion is oppressive, is they say, oh, it's good to be poor. And so people, have you heard the term asceticism? Anybody? What is it?
It means deny the material world part of it.
Right.
Just for your religion, so you don't care about material things at all.
If you watch, and it's almost the hardcore ascetics, they believe that any type of pleasure was bad. If you watch the Da Vinci Code, there's this crazy guy in there that whips himself because he feels like if he's feeling anything good at all, he's not religious. it's a sin to feel anything good at all. That's the extreme version of that. But I mean, once again, religions tend to bring on some extreme stuff. So think about that as you're reading through this. So, and then there's let's see. So, and then the last one is about Adam Smith. So there's the scientific curiosity is number 20. So I guess that was another thing is the ruling classes and the religions didn't want people to be too curious. They don't want people asking questions. They say curiosity, but it's like we don't want people asking questions. That's basically what that's saying.
Disadvantage for the government to have people in there.
Yeah. So to their governments.
To theirs, yeah.
To their governments. And this is one thing that I want you to, as you read over this, is so this is my theory, and we'll see if we can prove it in this class, is that the reason that America is as dominant as it is because of the amount of freedom that we enjoy here. So in America, you're allowed to do lots of things that in a lot of other countries or in lots of other societies you're not allowed to do. So there's some societies that are they're completely free. They have constitutions and everything, but their society in general is oppressive. I mean, they're just there's a lot of social pressure to stay in a certain mode. How many of you have been to Europe on like a Saturday afternoon after 5 o'clock? Are their stores open? They're closed. Yeah, like Sunday. If you go to eat somewhere on Sunday, what's open on Sunday? McDonald's, Walmart. Seriously, I was so surprised. For work. I was in Germany, and we went to this huge tourist area, and there was tons of people there, and none of the stores are open except for McDonald's. And then that's just open. It blew my mind because here we're open 24/7. I mean, even this year, like Walmart's open, like Walmart, Target, everybody's open, like Thanksgiving Day, so everybody can get into the stores. just crazy. Those kinds of things just get shut down in Europe because of it's just social pressure. I don't know where that pressure comes from. So they also, if you live in France and you work at McDonald's, how many weeks of vacation do you get?
Like 20, just kidding.
6 weeks of vacation. You start entry level, you have 6 weeks of vacation. It's one of the reasons. Well, that's one of the reasons the French have a bad reputation, is because when Americans vacation during the summer, they go over there. Nobody wants to be at work. So if they're at work during the summer, they're a little more angry. They're like, I have to work. All my friends are at the beach. And so there's those types of social. Here in America, we completely throw away those types of traditions.
We should not do that.
What?
I said we should not do that.
Should not do what? Throw away the traditions, or?
I mean, we should work less. Makes people too stressed.
So I will agree with that. I think as Americans we're overworked. However, because of the freedom that we enjoy, we realize if you overwork yourself, there's a good chance you're going to get rich. Because the people that so one of the wealthiest guys that I know, his cousin of mine, has this crazy, and I don't piece of hereditary in him. He's got heart problems, but he only has to sleep 4 hours a night. Seriously, and I think it's one of the reasons that he's so wealthy is because he goes to bed at 10 and wakes up at 2.
How old is he?
I don't know if he's still doing it. I mean, he's not working anymore. But when he was working, so when I knew him, he was. So when I found out he was doing that, he was 47, and that was like 15 years ago. So he's 47, he'd been doing it. And I talked to, so the first time, because I was working with him in his company, and one day we'd come in really early. Well, I'd say really early. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. We'd come in and get a job done. And at 6:30, he rolls in with his brother, and they're putting ties on because they have to go to a meeting. And they're like, "What have you been doing?" And they're like, "Oh, we've been out installing software." I'm like, he's like, "All night?" He's like, "Yeah." Just like, that is crazy. And then I talked to his daughter, maybe like 8 years later, and she said, "Oh yeah, he only sleeps from 10 to 2, and he can't sleep any longer than that. He'll just lay in bed, and so he just gets up." And so that's one of the things in America that a lot of people say, just sleep less, you work extra. I cannot work on 4 hours of sleep. I can do 6 hours, like 5 days during the week, but the next 2 days, I'm going to struggle. My wife could not do that. My wife has to have 8 or 9 hours. It's just. But my wife also, one of the things that my wife, she cannot sleep. Like, I could seriously sleep through a train. Seriously, like a train could drive through my house and I'd sleep through it. My wife, on the other hand, our kids like just barely make a noise. She's up out of bed. I'm like, how did you hear like 3 doors down, doors are closed, our 10-year-old throwing up? How did you hear that? She's like, I just hear it. I'm like, that's why she needs to sleep 9 hours a day. So that's one of the things that I want to talk about in this class is try to prove that the more freedom you have, the freedom you have to think however you want to do whatever you want to, will help boost the society. So the last question here is, why do you suppose some would call Adam Smith the Antichrist? So, and this is a question that I think you need to, because every reading so far has had to do with Adam Smith. They've mentioned Adam Smith. And so Adam Smith, and we're even going to study Adam Smith also. But just think about that. Why would he be considered the Antichrist? Anybody have it from what you've read so far about Adam Smith? Why would people say that? Anyone? We'll talk. If nobody's answering that question, we'll talk about that one in the next class. Look that up and figure why people would say that about Adam Smith, and why you think that might be right or wrong. So.
Didn't you say because of Christianity is why it burned out?
That's part of it, and it's kind of like what I've been explaining is religion does a good job of controlling people. I mean, that's part of it, and I think that was. We'll read more about Adam Smith, but just take a look at it. But these are thoughts that we just want to put in your head, and as you read through these things, start to question. Why is this person saying what they're saying? So it's the same thing with, I brought up the thing with Ralph Waldo Emerson. He talks a lot about religion and how bad religion is. But you have to understand the context of Ralph Waldo Emerson. He was actually anti-Harvard at that point. Harvard was part of the Unitarian Church at that point, and so they were teaching Unitarian doctrine at Harvard, and so they were kind of against that. So, one of the things I think is crazy about people want freedom, and then once they get the freedom that they want, then they start to work with other people, and you say you need to believe what I believe, because the Puritans all left England because they couldn't practice their religion. Then they get to America and say, okay, the Native Americans, you need to live this way. So you need to believe our religion. So I just think it's funny how, and companies are the same way. They like to say, freedom of speech and everything, but then if you work for big companies, don't get on Twitter, don't get on Facebook. If you say anything bad, we're gonna fire you. Which is just crazy. All of a sudden, you move from a free society into a dictatorship when you start working for some of those bigger companies. So that, and these are the types of things that you need to think about. That's what we're trying to get. That's the purpose of this class. Get you to think kind of both sides of these things as these are presented to you as you go throughout your life. So that's all we've got for today. Any questions about Canvas?
The dates on Canvas. Please not go off the dates on Canvas.
You should go off the dates on Canvas, because I'll look through the dates. If they're wrong, I'll change them.
Okay. So chapter 7 will be
Next Tuesday. Well, I shouldn't say Tuesday. It should be due Monday night. So chapter 7 should be due Monday night, and then we'll discuss it on Tuesday.
Yeah, and that other discussion, right, that we talked about with the two guys,
Darwin and
that one's due as well on the weekend, right?
that was due on the weekend. That's the watch the video. Oh, before everybody leaves, you can fairly easily rip the pages out of the book. I would be reading the questions. This is one of the things. Don't read the chapter before you read the questions. And as you read the chapter, read the questions. This will save you tons of time on your homework. So I want you to keep your homework to a minimum in this class. So work smart. Don't read the chapter and then look at the questions. Look at the questions and read the chapter at the same time.
I did that like 2 chapters. Take it 3 hours.
Yeah. So
you said chapter 6 is not due tonight. We can turn in like on Saturday.
well, there's another assignment due Saturday. So you should just get it turned in as soon as you can.
Okay.
So,
But you won't work late.
no, I'm not going to work.
Do we have a final in this class?
There is a final in this class.
Do you know the date of it?
That way we should